Hey everyone, I'm Ryan from 60 Cycle Hum, the world's best guitar podcast, operating underneath the same name since 2014. I'm with Matt Knight of Boss, and only Boss. He's not known for anything else.
I'm not known for anything else.
He's going to show me this Waza Craft box here, the reactive load thing. What's the actual name of it? The tube amp expander. I couldn't remember. And it says right there, tube amp expander. I'm following Glen Frickers, so I watched you show this to him, so I already know what it does.
Yeah, so
don't even try.
No, I guess we should try and do. I guess we should try and do something a bit.
I guess we should be
right?
teaching my audience about it because my audience is different from Glen's. So
yeah, and you do a very different thing. You're not.
That's true. I'm not Glen. I'll never be as good as Glen. I just can't yell fuck as loud as he can.
Yeah.
I try and I just can't.
He's got a special voice.
He does. So how do we want to attack this thing?
Okay.
I mean, you were showing off kind of like metal sounds with Glen, and he's very studio oriented and kind of live sound oriented. I record demos in my garage with a Princeton that's like too close to my ear.
So let's take that approach then on what this actually is and how this would say benefit you or someone doing a similar thing. So a reactive load, for people who don't know, is the mimicking of the impedance curve of a guitar when it's plugged into a speaker. So when a guitar plugs into a speaker, there's a particular amount of interaction, effectively. And the more you crank your valve amp up, the better it sounds. Mm-hmm. Generally, the better it sounds. The problem is, if you've got family or neighbours or whatever, and every time...
How did you know that?
I know where you live. Address at the bottom of the screen. The problem is you crank it up and it sounds great, but it's just too loud.
Yeah.
So plugging into this box a reactive load safely loads the amp down to a completely quiet sound, so you can crank your amp up and get a really great tone. So we're running a 50 watt amp here, over halfway. You can see here, this is our clean volume. Now normally that would blow your face off. Basically.
Yeah, I mean you can see this room, there's cracks in the walls and stuff, and the wallpaper is peeling off, and it's because they weren't running this, and they just had this amp turned up.
Exactly. So
this was a new room this morning.
This is what happens when you play amps too loud. So effectively we can crank the amp, so we just get a sound like this. And that's this amp cranked.
That's turned all the way up, and you're just getting that.
Yeah, I mean we can
not all the way, but it's turned up enough that you're getting it's starting to work against itself, and you're getting tube overdrive and
exactly.
breaking up.
I mean we're going even louder here. We're probably at 8, so. Still totally responsive, obviously, to your guitar. So So you can still play your guitar exactly how you want to play it. You're just
poorly. That's how I want to play it.
But you can crank this and get the sound that you want out of it.
Yeah.
So when you come into this box, what we can then do is we load the sound down to 0. So rather than a traditional attenuator where you're kind of knocking back the volume like bit by bit, you've probably used one before and gone, the more I attenuate, the more tone I tend to lose, because you're effectively...
That's why I'm losing tone.
That is exactly, it's not going down the drain.
I'm attenuating too much. That's the problem.
But this actually runs into a power amp, so you can take your little Princeton that's 12 watts and go out and gig it and turn it into 100 watts.
It's big enough. You don't need to call it little.
I'm sorry.
But I'm basically using this video as an excuse to bust Matt's balls.
Oh, I know. This is my weekend, I guess.
This is what you get.
So each one of these clicks of this switch is now a different reactive load, which is effectively a different type of speaker cab. So if I just play and then you move those, what you'll hear is the sound change, but it's not an EQ shift necessarily, it's actually the interaction between this valve amp and a cab. So if you imagine taking your Princeton, for example, or take this, and you plugged it into 16 different cabs, your amp would feel and respond differently because cabs all have different speaker loads. So yeah, if I just play and you just tweak those, you'll actually hear quite a big sound difference.
I'm looking forward to tweaking your knobs, man. Yeah, it's like a total it's like a feel difference.
Exactly.
It's not like an EQ difference or like even a gain structure difference. It's like in the in-room feel changes with each one.
Yeah, so I mean that's the great thing, and obviously you as an individual player have a different way of playing and a different style, and all of that feel and response changes as you change your active load because it's like you're plugging into a different speaker cap.
Yeah.
And that's just part one. The interesting part, and I think maybe the interesting part for yourself, is when you take something like the amps you use for recording. We take this dry sound, and you're like, oh, well, I want to use a reverb pedal, I want to use a delay pedal, but I'm cranking the amp, so if I plug it into the front end,
yeah,
it's not the clean sound that you want.
It might be interesting, but it might not be what you want. You know?
So what we've done is we've actually built an effects loop in here.
Oh, nice.
So everything that's here will sit post power amp. So if you get the effects loop in, you can run your delays or anything like that in here through the effects loop, and then you get that nice sort of clean signal running out, and then through that, and then back into your amp, so you get a nice sound rather than going straight in. But if you don't want to use any pedals, we've actually built some effects in for you. The first one is just this reverb control. So if you tweak that a little bit.
Isn't that it's like platey reverb?
That's a plate, but I know you're
I called it out. It's a plate.
You're a spring man, right?
I'm a spring boy.
So
I like them springs.
We've actually got, so there is an editor as well. You don't have to use the editor, but it does allow you to adjust a bunch of the settings on here. So we can take a spring reverb, and then you've still got it.
You got a bunch of settings here.
Yeah.
For the just the reverb.
So high cut, low cut, dampening. You've got your line out and speaker sends, overall effects level, and then yeah, you can even adjust the the delay time so we can.
Whoa, it's never gonna stop. Let's turn the pre-delay all the way up. Let's turn the density all the way up. Let's turn the tone all the way up. Let's turn everything all the way up. Well, maybe not the low cut. Okay, what happens now?
Okay, so this will still be your like global level.
Okay.
But we got something like this.
It's almost like a freeze effect. Like a forever cymbal crash.
Exactly. So and then you can still dial the mixing down here. So
of course you can do normal stuff with it too.
You can do normal stuff with it. But what's interesting? I mean, we can take a whole bunch. So we've got halls in here as well. So you've got some bigger, more ambient stuff if you want it. But we've also built in some delays. So we've got a classic SD3000. Because the feed that we're giving the sound team here is dual XLR out, so you'll be hearing that in stereo. You can adjust the modulation, and then you can dial the reverb in with it as well. So you can start taking an amp that sounds like this, and
It seems like this box covers a lot of ground. Like I didn't realize that there was built-in effects, and I knew it was like had a loop.
yeah.
And I knew that like you can incorporate like things with different signal paths. I didn't realize it had built-in effects.
Well, so what's really interesting is this is MIDI controllable as well, and you can save up to 10 presets on the front panel. So you could take a MIDI controller and just use that live, or we make our own foot controller that will give you stomp control over the reverb, the effects loop, and then also you can also change presets on it as well. But what's cool is each preset, from the XLR point of view, can be a different cab sim.
I'm looking at the back.
So each cab sim that you have on there can be recorded live. So you can have one tune where you're blasting through a 4x12, but in another one you're doing a 1x12 or something like that as well. Which is great for studio because you can just have this set up next to your desk. You can use it as an interface. It's got USB.
It seems like it just like solve any problem box.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, I guess.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we make some really popular amplifiers that I'm sure most yourself have tried, but not everyone wants to use a solid state amp or a modelling amp. And actually, a lot of the people that have gone to that still own like an old JCM 800 or a Marshall. Or the amount of people that have gone, I'm going to dig my old Fender out of the garage because I haven't been able to plug it in because it's too loud. Mm-hmm. This is a great solution. For
throw
that.
like this on a twin reverb, and now you can play it at home again.
Exactly. Yeah, and you don't have to use any of the effects in here, but you can dial that reactive load in to give you the exact feel and response that you actually want. And what's really cool is that if you take this out live, you can run the speaker volume and the line out volume at the same time. So your front of house guy can have an XLR feed as well as a mono direct front of house feed, but you could still run into a cab and have that mic'd up.
So you can run your amp normal, and then run a mix off of this into various devices. Yeah. And it just...
Or say,
it just solves problems for you.
Yeah, or say if you're at a gig and you're just micing up the volume, but you want to record the session and you just want to record your guitar tones, you can do that as well.
That's great.
We've got some artists that we're working with at the moment who have switched from using particular sort of bits of kit, want to bring back their old kit from way back when, but they still want to hear the modern impulse responses they've been using. And you can send that XLR out into the front of house guy, and he can send the custom IRs into your in-ears, but on stage he's still getting a mic'd up sound volume as well, so you can still feel it cranked, because you've got that 100 watt power amp in here as well, so you can still crank it.
There's 100 watts in this.
This is 100 watts in here as well. So this is the other key part with the reactive load that makes it quite different.
That's a lot of watts.
I
don't know if you know that.
It's a lot.
I can count to 100, but it takes me a while.
This is not an attenuator in the true sense. This is your volume control for your speaker. So think of it like a second master volume. So your amp goes into this, it loads it down to 0, and then you've got 100 watts worth of volume that you can play with.
So you could put an amp that's like super low power. You could like plug a pig nose into this and turn it into a 100 watt amp.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that was one of the original ideas, was taking this great little pig nose with a preamp out, speaker out, and effectively going into this and getting that sound, but going
and
out
just
and
put
playing.
it into a double stack and just go crazy.
Exactly. So this will actually allow you to run 2 cabs at the same time. So you can actually run 2 4x12s on stage, and then have your XLRs going out on here as well, and then you've got your mono front of house feed. And if you're in a studio, you can have your USB and have your USB tap off that as well. So,
what does it not do? Because you keep saying stuff that it does.
It doesn't make.
I feel like you're going to run out of things that it does.
It doesn't make a great cup of English breakfast tea, unfortunately.
Well, neither can I.
Neither can I. I don't drink tea. But the idea was of this kind of thought of bringing the tube world into the new world, basically. Taking the guys that want to use a tube amp, because there's plenty of people out there that want to use valve amps, myself included, but you want to record with it easy, you want to turn it up, you want to add effects. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you want to do.
I noticed that you call it a tube amp and a valve amp. You don't have to be afraid. Glenn's not in the room anymore.
It's a valve amp.
I won't yell at you for calling it
Who
a valve
invented
amp.
the tube? Or the valve? Was it an English guy or was it an American guy?
I don't think we know who invented a tubular shape. Like, that goes back to the Romans, I'm sure.
But the great thing is it does really cover everything that you could want to do. And it's got a headphone output. So when we're here at TGU and we're in the tent, we've actually got this set up just straight into headphones. And the headphones...
Of course it has a headphone out, because it's got everything, right?
Yeah, but the headphones will give you the cab sim that you're using on here as well. So everything that we're hearing in this video is all cab simulation. We're not miking up a cab or anything, and that same one will come straight out of the headphones as well.
It sounded like there was like a cab running in here. Like it sounded like a real guitar amp.
It's been really interesting. We did a bunch of tests in a studio where we actually had a 1x12 and we were A/Bing it with the 1x12 simulation, and the XLRs were going into a really nice desk into a massive pair of $100,000 studio monitors, and then we had a cab mic'd up with a couple of really expensive mics, and it's like they're so close you almost just don't need to really bother miking up a cab, which is great for people like me who live in a small apartment and you just want to hear a great sound.
I mean, my situation is I'm sitting in my garage working on demos for like 6 hours a day, and just like sometimes the amp is just cranked because I'm like demoing like a boost pedal or an overdrive that needs to push into a high amp, and I'm just shoving like earplugs into my ears as tight as I can get them, and just thinking like, I hope my neighbors aren't home.
Yeah.
And my family's in the house and the babies are crying because daddy is playing loud guitar again. But like if I had something like this, I could throw this on top of my Princeton and crank the Princeton as loud as I want and get the tone that I want without destroying my ears and like giving myself like some sort of bone disease because of like the sound waves are just pummeling me all day every day.
Well, and that's the thing, you can take that those XLR feeds and straight out into your little handheld recorder.
Yeah, you know what I do. He knows I record into an H6.
Then you can get lovely sounds.
Yeah. Where's my camera? It sounds beautiful.
I know. I just really love it for. I mean, there's some ridiculous stuff you can do, but I mean, we've got like a panning delay, and this was one thing I was messing around with before and giving a lot of reverb. You can then.
It's going back and forth here. Beautiful.
That's lush and ambient.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's great to take an amp that you wouldn't think to get that sound out of a Marshall, for example.
Right.
If you're running a cranked vintage Plexi, but now you've got that option. You can run that amp live. You can run into monitors, or the idea of putting it in the rack was you've now got this portable touring rig. Because the amp's going into the reactive load, you're going to get the same consistent reactive load every night. If you're playing a tour and you can't take a cab, the cab could vary from venue to venue, and then every night's going to be a different sound. Reactive load stays the same. You can run the speaker volume if you want some stage volume. The XLR goes straight out with your custom IRs, and you could even just tour with a couple of stage monitors. So it really covers so many bases, and it's just a great thing to have out there. And we've had loads of wonderful comments about it, and I can't wait for more people to get out there and start using it. Basically,
It's on the market now. People are buying it.
It is on the market now. In the UK, RRP is €12.99. I think it's around the same USD, and it's landed in shops within the last few weeks. So you can go out and get one right now.
Go do it. Stop watching
From
YouTube.
right here,
Go out to a shop and buy one right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to this, man.
And then now you go get this, and now a world of used amps opens up to you. You can go on Craigslist or Gumtree or whatever
This
happens where you are, and you can buy that full stack now.
Exactly. You can go out and there's a whole wealth of great valve amps out there that now you can really open up and crank and use. And especially if you're someone who's got something locked away in their garage.
Yeah.
And you haven't been able to use it because you can't crank it, but you don't want to get rid of it. This
gives you the excuse to buy the amps that you that's all you need is an excuse, right? To spend that money that you've been wanting to spend on those amps that you like, your fantasy amps. This is your ticket to ride with full stacks and twin reverbs and just giant like Marshall things and whatever.
Well, here's one interesting thing that was something that came up quite a few times, and having worked in a store myself previously. Someone comes in and they want to buy their dream amplifier. They've been saving up for months, years maybe, to buy this really expensive, maybe it's $4,000, $5,000 valve amp. And they go to the shop and they crank it to 10 and it sounds amazing. And you get it home and you can't do that. You're on one and you're like, why doesn't it sound the same? I've spent all this money. It doesn't sound the same.
Honest, you go to your band rehearsal and you can't do that either.
Yeah, exactly. so this effectively allows you to capture that sound, and then you've just got that secondary master volume on there that just dials into whatever situation you're in.
Yeah, it's like if you go and you buy one of those amps from Satellite that's like 300 watts and has tubes this big and just one knob on it.
Yeah.
Now you can play that at bedroom levels.
Exactly. Straight into headphones.
Straight into headphones. Here's 300 watt, one knob Satellite amp.
Exactly.
Straight into headphones, and it's going to sound good.
So it's been a wonderful bit of kit to be a part of, and I'm so glad it's out in the market, and I can't wait for people to start using it, basically. So there you go.
Thanks for showing me this, Matt. Thanks for being a guest on the world's best podcast. Running under the same name.
I guess those
since
who know,
2014.
Those who know. I think we should say on that
one. Those who know are telling me no. They're asking me to stop.
I think we'll leave it there.
Bye, everybody. Stay grounded. Cheers.